Gabriel Gillen, he's the executive director of the Dominican Foundation. James Freeman from the Wall Street Journal is with us. Bill Daley, he's a former FBI investigator. And Gerald Posner, author of the book God's Bankers, A History of Money and Power at the Vatican. And Father Gabriel, I'd like to start with you and just kind of get your initial thoughts on what David mentioned a few moments ago, and that was that historic address to Congress this morning, that joint meeting of Congress, not a session, but a meeting of Congress. What are your initial thoughts about the Pope's remarks this morning?
I was very pleased with his remarks. He challenged, I think, everybody on both sides of the political spectrum. He's not trying to be political, but there's obviously in that context certain key issues. He, is trying to remind people that, we're called to be challenged. And I think he did that. One of my favorite visits was the unplanned visit to the Little Sisters of the Poor. He was certainly sending a message there. He was also challenging us all to enter into a dialogue to fix problems and see where we can have common ground.
James, the Wall Street Journal editorial page has been kind of critical of the Pope. Dan Henniger had a piece today about the politicization of the Pope, but today was different. Even though the media is playing it as a tilt to the left, the New York Times has a piece I'm reading on their website. They actually changed the headline, but originally it was tilting to the left. From my perspective, I really didn't feel he played to one side or the other. There was one line, even a nod to the goodwill of business people in the United States when he was talking about the spirit of America, and I'm quoting him. He said, "Business is a noble vocation directed to producing wealth and improving the world. It can be a fruitful source of prosperity for the area in which it operates." So, James, even a nod to business, which, of course, he's been criticized for being critical of in the past.
Yeah, I think for someone who likes free markets, for conservative Catholics, really today could have been so much worse when you look at what he had said recently in the encyclical.
Is that the best face it could have been worse? I thought it was pretty good,
I think
actually.
What's frustrating, I think, for people of a conservative bent is that his progressive messages tend to be explicit and the conservative ones tend to be more implied.
Hold on a second, because I got to push back. This was a very explicit reference to business, calling it a noble vocation. There's nothing subtle about that.
That was a very good thing to hear, and I think there are other things that were positive as well. He talked about subsidiarity, which I think is really a conservative principle. He also reminded Americans that the Declaration of Independence, those beautiful opening lines, we hear that our rights come from God. So I think for conservative Catholics, those were all nice messages to hear.
I know I do want to bring in Bill Daley, and again, these live pictures, if you're just joining us, we're looking at Shepherd 1, which is an American Airlines 777 Boeing that is going to be taking the Pontiff to New York City. I do want to bring you in, Bill, on that, because the Police Commissioner Bill Bratton saying that this visit by the Pope for New York City is, quote, the largest security challenge the department and the city will ever face. More than 6,000 extra police officers, more than 1,100 police cars. There's concrete barriers. I don't think I've ever seen New York City in this state of preparedness, and I guess rightly so, sir.
Yeah, you're right, Cheryl. I mean, it really is unprecedented. I mean, if we look out the studio windows here, about an avenue away from St. Patrick's Cathedral, we can even see some of that security in place here. I mean, it really is something that the police and the Secret Service in this case actually does take the lead on protecting the Pope. He is a head of state, so he does get that type of level of diplomatic protection. But the New York City Police Department has deployed, as I said, thousands of police officers. They've also put up barricades, cement barricades, closing off a good part of Midtown Manhattan here.
8 feet tall barricades. They're incredible along Fifth Avenue.
Exactly. And I really would say is that there are a number of things that are driving this. Is that, A, it is the Pontiff's visit here. He's drawn a lot of attention. We know that overseas he's had some adversaries. You have even people from ISIS who made threats against the Vatican and the Pope. But it's also really here, at the same time, we have many heads of state who are at New York and the UN for the 70th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly.
Which he'll be addressing. We should let our viewers know.
Exactly. So there's a number of kind of a convergence of big security issues here, and certainly the Pope right now is main center stage, and certainly the man of the afternoon as we all wait here in New York.
6,000 police officers, 1,173 police cars, 818 tons of concrete barriers. The list goes on and on. He's going to be at the UN, Ground Zero, a school in Harlem Central Park, Madison Square Garden, all in one day. That is tomorrow. Tonight, of course, he has Vespers, evening prayers at St. Patrick's Cathedral. But, Mr. Posner, one thing I'd like to ask about the speech itself, continuing on what we were saying before, the speech this morning and speeches to come. Who writes those speeches? Because the Vatican is a world in itself. They must be aware, however, of the feedback that he's been getting. He alluded to it himself on the plane here, saying he's not as liberal as a lot of people think he is. Who actually writes those speeches? How are they written?
There are a handful, Dave, of cardinals around him and a Monsignor and a bishop, Monsignor Ganswein, who had been an aide to the former Pope Benedict, who understand a bit of the secular politics. Remember, the Vatican is his own country, after all, so it is also a country. They wear that hat at the same time they are the world's second largest religion. And that handful of advisors will do the drafts. And then this is a hands-on Pope. They know that from Buenos Aires. All of the advisors in Argentina told the people in Rome, this Pope gets down into the details. He will change words on you. He'll rearrange lines.
So if I may, I'm thinking back to Ronald Reagan, back when he wrote his Tear Down This Wall speech. A lot of his advisors told him, don't do it. It's too antagonistic to the Soviet Union. He said, the heck with it. We're gonna keep those words. It sounds like this Pope has the same kind of attitude towards speeches.
No, I think that's absolutely right. As a matter of fact, the last Pope who had this type of attitude was John Paul II, the Polish Pope, who was a great ally in the alliance with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in bringing down communism, especially in building up solidarity in Poland. So this Pope does have that touch. If you hear something and he's walking the fine line, trying to not antagonize someone, but remember, his main goal on this trip is to make the tent inclusive, to bring it as far as possible so that everybody can come into the faith, increase the numbers of Catholics who want to be there, who want to come back, who feel good about being Catholic. I'm a Catholic journalist, and I look at it from that perspective. This is a Pope who talks about a large encompassing tent, and he wants everybody there.
But just to the extent that this message was much more conciliatory than a lot of people thought it would be, the message today in Congress, you're saying that had his stamp, his personal stamp on it. It wasn't just something written by a speechwriter.
It's not just a mistake. You know, he's more than just a smile. And I know that from the last 2 years because I saw this Pope come in, and I was skeptical about him when he first came in, that he would have the courage or the wherewithal or the smarts maybe to be able to reform this scandal-ridden Vatican bank that I wrote about. Right. He did. He's in the process of doing it, making it into a mundane, ordinary sort of central Federal Reserve. He's able to do that because he's hands-on, he's involved in the details. Now, if something comes up that you don't like, or the people don't like, or they hear something they don't like, he's going to take more heat from it because he is so hands-on, but he gets the benefit of it right now because he's popular with Catholics and non-Catholics.
Father Kevin Gabriel, Bill Daley, James Freeman, Gerald Posner, certainly, gentlemen, thanks to you.